Yes, yes, yes. Good afternoon, West Ham fans. Some people are criticising my introduction this morning, but rush to the West Ham Network. Hope you're all well. Happy Thursday. We are almost at the weekend, my friends. And West Ham take on Arsenal at the Emirates on Saturday afternoon. We'll have a couple of Arsenal fan previews coming up the next few days. So make sure you check them out. But it's been a manic day in the Budden household today. So we unfortunately didn't have time to do the Nuno'S Dugout first pre-match press conference synopsis. However, we'll be talking about that today in the world famous Hammers headlines in association with the KUMB.com boys. Normal service will be resumed for after the international break. There we go. Obviously, this being the last game before they all bugger off on the international break in terms of the likes of who's been called up. Diouf's been called up. Mavropanos has been called up, but various others have all been called up. Paqueta as well. But Nuno'S Dugout did his press conference this afternoon, talking ahead of the Arsenal game. Some interesting bits have come out, so we're going to talk about a few of them bits, and also talk about a transfer rumour. Yes, already. Let's start with his backroom staff in terms of Nuno's backroom staff. Now, obviously, he signed on Saturday. We played on the Monday, so he promoted the under-21 sort of coaching staff into the first team for that game. And by all accounts, that'll be the same when we play the Arse on Saturday. Nuno was asked about his backroom staff and pretty much said, he's not happy with it at the moment, but obviously he's going to be bringing his own people in. Reports have suggested that he expects to have his backroom staff in place before the end of the international break. However, negotiations are ongoing. There'd like to be any appointments before Saturday's game away to Arsenal. We spoke about it the other day in terms of Rui and Barbosa and, his generals, his coaching staff generals, and the majority of them are still contracted with Nottingham Forest. The only one not is Antonio Ruiz, who is his fitness guy. However, he's currently at Benfica with Jose Mourinho, having left his post when Nuno was dismissed from Nottingham Forest and went to Fenerbahce to team up with Jose Mourinho, and then went to Benfica with him after Jose was sacked at Fenerbahce. But so, most it's a little bit, you would assume he would have had people like ready to roll. But again, it sort of highlights the speed of the appointment, really. Yes, he probably had the guys line up, but probably didn't assume it was going to be, the assumption was we were going to make the change after the international break or for the international break. So we got the jump on us a little bit in terms of that. So, the surprising possibility of the youth team coaches remaining in the post for the Arsenal game. I don't think so. I think they did a great job. And as we said, Nuno is looking to bring in and keep maybe one or two of those in his backroom staff. I think Mark Robson probably being the most likely, in all honesty. So we'll have to see. And obviously that really helps the likes of Callum Marshall, Potsy, Ollie Scars in terms of having the ear of the academy boys in terms of Nuno'S Dugout. He was actually asked about, and speaking of the academy, one player who won't feature on Saturday and is the only person apparently injured is George Earthy. He, according to Nuno's press conference, is the only person. He was quoted, he was asked about team news, and he said, "Today we worked with 22 players and tomorrow we will make the decisions. Let's wait and see. With the exception of George Earthy, all players are available. I think George will be up to 4 to 6 weeks, having aggregated a recent injury." So shitter for George, but that means the stomach bug has finished. The stomach issue for Aaron Wan-Bissaka seems to have finished. Unsurprisingly, been out for 2 weeks with a stomach issue, but as I said, all 22, with the exception of George Earthy, were training today. So, and again, 22, we haven't got that many players. So, yeah, all players are available for Saturday, apparently. So we'll wait. Obviously, we exception Thomas Suchek, of course, which you didn't mention there. But obviously, Thomas playing in the under 21s game against Reading on Tuesday. Now, we are but 2.5 months until the transfer window opens again. Yes, my friends, how can you wait? And we'll all be linked with players. Obviously, this morning I spoke about some of the players that I think are on the chopping block when it comes to leaving West Ham and who are safe. That's obviously James Ward-Prowse, which, as we've mentioned, has had interest from a returning back to Southampton. But according to reports, West Ham are scouting. So now, one thing I don't know is we have our Italian scout. Is he still with us, Antonio? Because I believe technically Carl McCauley is still there as well, but it does seem that we are still pursuing deals in Serie A, and reports have suggested that West Ham have shown interest in Matteo Pellegrino. He is 23. He's Argentine. He's caught the eyes of many Premier League sides, particularly. He's a Spanish-born centre forward, big lad, and he started a good season already so far for Parma, and has picked up a couple of man and matches awards as well. Scored both goals in Parma's 2-1 victory against Torino at the weekend. Very much to me seems that sort of, going to keep saying it, going to be sick of it, Chris Wood type, focal point for Nuno'S Dugout Santos setup. Now, his former club, Valence, they retain a 50% stake in a future sale, and a sale could possibly, which could complicate matters a little bit further. But we know that he's keen in bringing in some firepower, and actually, he was keen on him when he was at Forest. However, according to the Italian website Tuttosport, Parma were unwilling to part with their front man until at least next summer. So we shall see. But as a number of also been linked with my mate Barris from Galatasaray as well today. But yeah, it makes sense. It does make sense. I mean, he's 23 as well. So, I just think we're building a real foundation now. You got to think of the likes of Magassa and Fernandez, both under the age of 20 or 21. Do you have 20? You got to assume Freddie Potts in there. Some of who's still quite young, but you've got Luis Guilherme below him as well. So there's lots of stuff hanging around. And I think we can have a really good squad, hopefully, going forward. But that's it, my friends. Keep an eye on thesearebrand.com for latest news, reviews, and opinions. And also keep an eye on the West Ham Network for the latest news, chat, opposition views, particularly as we get close to the game against the Arse on Saturday. Take care. Much love. Bye-bye.